This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 420 for Thursday, October 28th, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week is the very geeky Alastair McFly. You can find him at iMcFly on all the social media that matters. Welcome back, my friend.
Oh, good to be back.
And you are fresh on the heels of a vacation, and I am jealous. But I'm going to live vicariously. How did it go?
Oh, it was absolutely phenomenal. So I went to Cape Breton and went on the Cabot Trail, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I was recommended, because we spoke about this last time I was on.
Yes.
And I was recommended to go in autumn, or the fall, as it's known here. And I was told that like the colors were just neon. And that is accurate. That is astonishingly accurate. I don't think I've seen colors like that in the autumn quite before. But yeah, it was spectacular. And driving around as well. It's probably one of the most enjoyable drives I've ever had. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that I've waited until I've had a vehicle to do that.
I hear it's a really nice drive. Like I know there are some hikes and stuff, but I know just the drive alone. My grandparents used to do it, just like, and they weren't hikers. They didn't get out of the car. They would just go for a nice drive and to see the colors, you know.
Yeah, it's like driving through candy, I think is the best way to describe it. It's just
gotta love the old maple trees around here, eh? Like they really do change into bright colors. A couple of my neighbors, I'm not sure what the name of them is, but they're low shrubs, like they're maybe 4 foot tall. They have them along their front walk, and they are bright red, like candy cane red right now.
And there was a bridge that takes you over basically to the island. I didn't realize it was completely cut off, but it is like it is a full separate island from the rest of Nova Scotia.
Oh yeah,
and it's like the second you go over that bridge, all the colors change, and just the reds of those trees, as you were saying, like it's just more vibrant than anything that I've seen elsewhere.
Was it predominantly red, or did it have yellow and oranges going on too?
Oh yeah, you had greens, yellows, oranges, reds, the whole spectrum really.
That's great.
No blue, but I mean the sky accounted for that.
We not on an alien planet, you know, no tentacles in the air, no, you know, nothing like that. Did you hit any hikes? Did you go? Because you and I have hiked together before.
Yes, and I had a friend come with me as well. So Hannah came with me, and we went to a few different places. We saw a couple of waterfalls, one of them far more spectacular than others. But yeah, there were some really good hikes there. We went to the Fortress of Louisburg, which is a big national historic site. We walked around there for a bit. We went onto the Skyline Trail up in the Cape Breton Highlands National Park. That was phenomenal. Just some astonishing views. We also kind of went to a place that had one of the waterfalls called Egypt Falls.
Okay.
I don't know what's Egyptian about it, but that was really good. There was one trail that we went on, which was to try and find a waterfall, and it was more of a stream than anything, but it was a really long walk, and the elevation takes it out of you. Like, it's a really steep elevation, and it's not until we got up really high, I think it was like 280 meters or something, and we were struggling, like properly out of breath. And it's like, why is this so difficult? How unfit am I? And then as soon as you turn around and you start walking down, it's not just downhill is easier. It's like breathing becomes easier. It's like, oh wow, this is really noticeable in a way that I didn't really expect it to be.
How high was the meter change?
I think it was. I'm trying to remember. I remember looking at my watch and it had the elevation gain there. It was either 180 or 280. It was something like that.
Meters.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're getting close to 1,000 feet there. At
Yeah.
that point, like that's a significant change when you're used to, you and I live at sea level for all intensive purposes.
Yeah.
I experienced that when I was in Utah for the very first time. I didn't do hiking my first trip there, but the first time I was there, the resort that I stayed at was a ski resort, but the ski resort itself is in the mountain. And so you'd be walking around the convention center I was a podcasting convention called Nertacular, and you'd be walking throughout the hotel. Most of it's elevators, but when you're on the main floor, there's a number of stairs that go like down to the canteen area or down to the multipurpose facilities, and the breakfast buffet was downstairs, and you could elevator, but it's faster just to take a couple of flights of stairs. But the base elevation is 10,000 feet. I think it's 10,000 feet. Or maybe that's base elevation is around 8 or 9. I think the peak of the mountain is around 11 for like skiing and stuff like that. Wow. So being 10,000 feet above sea level for a maritimer, I would get winded taking the stairs. Like I'm not talking a hike. I'm talking 2 flights of stairs. You're like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
I noticed it a lot in my hikes in Utah as well when I was hiking, because it was hotter than Hades, right? So like it was 104 degrees. Now, sometimes it wasn't so bad because the base elevation in the low desert was like maybe 5,000. Like it wasn't a lot. It's still higher than home, but it wasn't a lot compared to some of the higher desert elevations. The trip there I found was you'd be driving to a park and you'd realize, okay, well, this park is pretty high. I guess at some point I'm going to have to start going uphill. And it's not like there's a gradual shift. You'd end up driving up very steep, winding roads to get to this new national park that you hadn't been to. And so I don't remember the trip to the Highlands and Cape Breton. Like, is it dramatic on the road as much as it is to hike?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like, especially when you're going through that national park, you're basically driving on roads around the mountains. And so you're getting astonishing views there. In a way, it's almost a shame being the driver because there's no way to just stop and take photos of everything, because everything you're looking through, I'm just in awe of just like the sheer rock faces and on your left and then the views to your right and stuff as you're going around. But yeah, it is probably the funnest drive I've ever had, period.
Nice. That's great, man. I'm glad that you really enjoyed it. I don't get out as often, but I certainly am quick to brag about the country. Like we live in a really pretty part of the world. Nova Scotia, especially, being picturesque in late summer, early fall. It's great. Now, ask me again in January, February, and while it can be pretty, it's less than hospitable. But until then, like right now we're getting pretty typical fall weather. It's been raining sideways for like 3 days. But when it's nice out, I really like the fall. Do you did you have any like look-offs and stops along the drive, or did you have to drive the whole, like, were there any places to like pull over?
Oh yeah, there was quite a few. There's in fact there was sometimes when we were just both marveling at just how great everything was, and then suddenly there was one point when Hannah was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Okay, well, we're pulling off here. Whatever it is, we need to see it." I'm so glad she just exclaimed with such joy, because we just saw this incredible. We were going over a bridge and just saw this incredible river that just went down under it, and we were able to just stop off and just sit there and just soak it all in. It was So there were times where we would just kind of pull over and things. It was really handy having her in the passenger seat as well, because I realized how reliant I've become on GPS. And there's not much signal out there. And I'm glad I am so glad we picked up a map, because there were suddenly points where we went there where we had no signal. And so there'd be nothing. And there'd have been no way, had we not even picked up a map to even figure out where we were. And on the way back was always hilarious, when we turned around, because we could always tell when we were about to lose service, because we were streaming music as well. I didn't download anything because the Wi-Fi at the hotel didn't actually work. It worked one night, of the entire time we were there. Otherwise, we had no Wi-Fi either.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew we were going to come up to it when suddenly the GPS map would turn to graph paper. Just as you're kind of appearing to the graph paper where it basically hadn't loaded the maps in on our way there, the way back, we're like, yep, we're about to lose signal again.
I have to say, I lost signal sometimes when I was hiking in parks, but I did not lose any cell signal when I was on the highways and at any point in Utah. I had GPS the whole way, and that would have been through Google Maps or Apple Maps, whatever I happened to be using at the time. I think it was Google Maps only because I was more familiar with the interface. But I just spent the $50 for however long I was going to be there, 10 days or something like that, and just paid for extra data. At the time, my data package sucked, and I would have been roaming anyway in the U.S. But yeah, the coverage there is pretty good. Well, you know what? I looked at it like, it was $50 a week for like 10 plus days, and I thought, you know what, $100 to have cell service, connectivity, and safety when I'm driving by myself. I thought, that's just part of the travel expense, Most of what I was doing in terms of my entertainment was hiking, which was either free or a nominal park fee, $10 or $20 for as long as you're going to be in the park for that day. And you could, or the next, actually, no, that's a lie. Only the state parks cost money. I bought a park pass that was like $75, and that was good for all the parks as often as you want for the entire summer. And I was just like, well, I'm only here for 10 days, but even then it's still cheaper because everything else was like $25 entrance fee. So if you're going to more than 3 parks, just get the pass, right? And I went to like 6 parks, so it was great. You do get used to the connectivity for sure.
Yeah, I can't remember how much it was for the Cape Breton National Park. I think it was something like $8 to $15, somewhere in that ballpark. It was not much.
Yeah, well, there's more government funding in Canada.
Yeah, right. Okay. But yeah, I think they gave you kind of like I want to say like 32 hours. Basically, you kind of got out of that. So it's enough if you were staying overnight, kind of thing, and camping out there. Plus, they know that you're there, so if anything happened and they found a car abandoned, at least it gives them an idea as to how many people are around and stuff, which is good.
Well, I don't have a lot new to report because I've been very busy with something I'm going to be talking about later on in the show. We do, however, have a listener email from Jordan, and the subject is Dune, the new film, with no spoilers for people that are concerned about it, because this only just came out recently. Hello, Joel and Alastair. I recently watched the new movie Dune on HBO Max. It was one of my favorite movies that I've watched this year. It seems on par with movie series like Pirates of the Caribbean and The Hobbit. There's supposed to be a sequel, I think, and it is inevitable with the amount of good reviews the movie has gotten. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I have a book recommendation, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. It's one of the best fiction novels that I have the pleasure of reading. Thanks so much for the amazing podcast, Jordan. Thanks for the great recommendation, Jordan. I've heard of The Name of the Wind. Of course, I feel like that's been in circles in my fantasy and sci-fi book discussions. I've never read it, but I've heard really good things. I know a number of my friends have read it. I haven't seen Dune yet, but it's on my list. The original film, which was in the 80s, I think, if not 70s, was one of the most interesting and unique experiences that I had as a young man for sci-fi outside of Star Wars and Star Trek. I don't think I had watched much Star Trek at that point, but I had certainly seen Star Wars. And so getting to see something that was completely unique and not just derivative, of that was really, really cool. And it led me actually into playing a lot of the 90s real-time strategy game Dune. And if I remember, rocket tanks for the win. Pretty sure that was how you toasted most people in that game. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I think, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in a minute because of Star Trek news. But I think in November, I might take the plunge of putting my Netflix subscription on hold for a month or two. And resubscribe to Crave here in Canada, which is how you also stream HBO as well. Unless that's changed and we have HBO Max access now. I haven't checked, actually.
No, I just logged on last night to Crave, and I haven't had a chance to look into it yet. But they had an announcement page that came up saying that all of the features of Crave will be available for all subscriptions. So I think that now HBO will be included as just the regular Crave subscription rather than it being an additional add-on to it.
Yeah, because it was $10, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah, so
what
$10 for Crave plus $10 for the HBO add-on.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they're just including everything in all at once now.
And I'm paying that for Netflix right now because I pay for the Dolby Atmos / 4K versions of some of the content. So, which is worth it when you have a brand new TV. So I pay. It's not quite $20. It's like $18.99 or something. Once you put tax on it, it comes to 22 something. So it'll be a one in, one out kind of switch. But the reason why I want to do that is because of Dune, a couple of other HBO things that I don't remember right now. I just kind of like made a list, say, okay, there seems to be enough of a pile now that I can go and watch that. There's also a few things on HBO that I've just never finished, like Westwood. There's other things that, would be worth going and checking out on HBO. Usually there's a lot of like content there that I haven't seen in a while or haven't seen, at all. And I find that Crave and HBO don't have enough content for me. That's my type of content to have a ongoing subscription. But a couple times a year, I'll jump in for a month and be like, oh, I'm going to go watch this because I'll have, like Discovery is coming out the 18th of November is the next season of Discovery. And I've barely even started season 3. So I'll have a few weeks to get into that. And right now, honestly, the biggest hang up I have with streaming is trying to decide what to watch. I won't get into the list, but I have started and discontinued like a dozen things in the last 2 weeks. Like starting to try a movie sucks. Or watch a movie that I think I've seen before, but it's been 10 years, get a few minutes into it, get 20 minutes into it, and just never get back to it. Try a new series. And then that starts to suck. You're just like, ugh, I can't. I was watching Yellowstone for a while on Amazon Prime, and the first season or two of that's pretty good. It's a lot of like rich people behaving badly, which isn't my cup of tea. And there was like a hero in it. Like there was somebody that was good natured, but then that changed. And they started spending all this time on these secondary characters that I don't give two shits about. And I'm just like, no, okay, I can't. Like, I find it so hard for series to maintain like a decent momentum. And at least when I was watching Discovery, I think at the time it must have been either like pandemic stress. It might have been just finances tighten things up and wanting to like switch over to a different system or a different service. So I canceled Crave and then moved on to something else. It might have been Disney Plus. Like, I don't remember what it was. It could have been that. Like, it could have been like The Mandalorian came out before I finished Discovery. And I was like, all right, well, I'm watching The Mandalorian. So stuff like that. And I have to say, I'm still watching The Bad Batch and I'm still enjoying The Bad Batch. I just, for whatever reason, don't think to turn it on. Like, I don't think to play an episode. I go to other services very often before I go to Disney. I find with Disney Plus, even with the addition of Star under their banner, I don't go there browsing. I go there when I know there's something there that I want to watch, like when The Mandalorian starts or when there's a Marvel series that's ongoing that I want to watch. I'll remember, oh yes, I want to watch that, and I'll load up that specific show on Disney Plus. But on Netflix, it's just like, I don't know what I'm in the mood for. I'll check my list and see what's up, and then I'll try to find some things, and like ultimately I'm not really sure about it. So it's, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my experience when I used to have Netflix was that my evening wouldn't be spent watching things. It would just be browsing through what I don't want to watch.
Yep.
It'd just be a lot of indecision and a lot of, maybe no, maybe what's on this one? Oh, let's try a different genre, and let's have a... And I would just never actually get around to watching anything.
Yeah.
I could watch an entire movie in the time that I spent just browsing for something.
Have you seen Dune?
I have not yet. No, that is definitely on my list to watch. I I did watch the original movie, and I cannot remember much of it. I remember being very excited that Patrick Stewart was in it to sort of see Captain Picard in another role, which I believe was probably the first time I saw him in anything that wasn't Star Trek at that age. But I kind of went the opposite way round to you in that I played Dune 2 on DOS before I knew about the movie. So that's kind of how I went into that there. I do have a copy of the book as well, but when I heard they were making a film, I decided, you know what, I'm going to wait for the new one to come out and watch that, and then I'll probably get round to the book after it though.
I like the cast. I mean, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Zendaya. I think
Zendaya.
Zendaya. So wow, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Zendaya. I really like her in Spider-Man. She's great.
Yeah, it's a very strong cast.
Yeah. It's funny enough, like Timothée Chalamet, I know who he is. I don't think I've seen him in anything else, mostly because the things that he's in are just not usually my cup of tea. So I just don't bother. I mean, I could say that if it wasn't for Momoa being in Game of Thrones and as Aquaman, I don't think I've seen much of the other things that he's done either. I know you've told me that C is really good. That's on Apple TV Plus, I think.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's really good. He like my first introduction to him was through Stargate Atlantis.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was where his like first proper big role was. He was also bizarre. Like if you look for photos of it, it's astonishing seeing what he looked like back then. He was in Baywatch as well.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I've seen the older photos. Yeah. Again, not something that I would have watched anyway. But yeah, no, he does very young.
Yeah, but Atlantis was like where I know him from, whereas I know the majority of people, it was Game of Thrones that was like his real breakout.
Yeah,
was the majority of people
in Atlantis? Because again, Stargate is not what it's one of those properties I just never got into. In his role in Stargate, was he a monster or was he still a skinny kid?
Oh no, he was built.
Yeah, okay.
He was properly built. Yeah,
I wonder when it'd be an interesting interview because people always talk about what he's doing now. Like, he's always he kind of dominates interviews, and people don't generally ask a lot of questions. They're just kind of an interesting conversation because he's such an interesting dude. But I would be curious to actually hear like when that shift happened. Like, when did he go from like, you know, built but like swimmer body Baywatch dude to like he's a big man, he's a monster. I'm curious as to when that happens because there's always that funny shift. I mean, like Chris Evans is a little bit slimmer now than he was when he was Captain America, but before that he was always like the svelte kind of like Hollywood slim kind of looking guy, but you know, athletic but not like big. But then for Captain America he got really large, and some of that has, I guess, carried over, and then of course you've seen a lot of promo stuff for the workouts that Chris Hemsworth is doing now for Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah. And he's a big lad when he puts his mind to it as well. It's pretty cool to see. Just because of me getting back into fitness, watching and following a number of, I want to be very careful here. I don't follow fitness influencers, but I follow fitness professionals. So kinesiologists, physiotherapists, Squat University is actually a really good account. So stuff like that. And so as a result, though, I do see a lot of ads and other kind of fitness related things when it comes to, you know, Chris Hemsworth's, you know, workout for this particular movie, or there's a couple of guys that I follow, and they're actually pretty good on YouTube. I think it's called Buff Dudes. I mean, it's clickbaity as all hell, but what they do is they do the research and they see if they can find things like Chris Hemsworth workout for Thor, Henry Cavill's workout for Superman, and then they do it, and they're just like, this was hard as hell, or like this was amazing, or this is actually really good, a really interesting workout, and they'll explain why. And one of the things I thought was really cool, specifically about the Henry Cavill workout that they showcased, this was a couple of years ago now, was that it really emphasized on power. Like, it wasn't like they were in there sculpting abs and sculpting shoulders in a specific way with dumbbells and stuff. He did just a lot of like Olympic lifting, like lifting heavy stuff over your head, like Superman is supposed to be able to do. So you look the part. And I thought it's a really interesting approach. And some of the stuff that I see from clips online of Chris Hemsworth is like flipping these like huge tractor tires and like rope pulls. And it's not traditional gym movements per se. I'm sure he's doing those too, but a lot of the flashier stuff you see is just like moving really heavy, awkward things around, strongman competition stuff.
Yeah. Brie Larson's been doing a lot of that stuff for Captain Marvel as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She's had some really intense regimes for all of that. There were times when I kind of wish that I could go and do some of this stuff, because there are like workout packages that you can get that are from some of their trainers. And I always kind of think, like, as good as that would be, it's the diet that I have the problem with. I like my food, and I feel like I'd have to give up food to even get into doing something where you'd have to go all in.
Yeah. It's something that now that I've been back in for about 2 months, and I have been busy in October, so I haven't gone nearly as much as I want to. I've been working out at home about half the time, or more than that, I guess. But for me, nutrition, and I'm always careful not to think about it like a diet, because it's the nice thing about training as often as I do is that you can at least eat, what you want and not be too worried. I mean, you can't be completely, out of touch. But the thing is, for me, I like good food. Like, I don't crave hamburgers all the time. Like, if I have hamburgers 3 nights in a row, I'm going to feel like I had hamburgers 3 nights in a row, so I tend to go for more like chicken and stir fries and vegetables and all that kind of stuff. But it is nice. The thing is, like, when you are doing those heavy workouts and you're burning like a lot of calories, and you're just like, Friday night chocolate chip cookies. I'm having 6 because it doesn't matter. Like, I've trained all week, and unless I'm on some really strict, goal, then it's just like, well, you can give yourself some treats. Because I'm like you. I don't want to cut things out. I just want to, make sure that the things that I'm still enjoying are guilt-free / like, healthy, or part of a healthy ensemble, like, for me, the hardest part is, fixing meals alone that are healthy, because ultimately you're cooking meals or recipes, and they serve like, 3 to 4 servings, and you're just like, well, crap, like, it's just me. So I end up doing a lot of just like meat and potatoes and vegetables, which is kind of boring after a while. But that's because, it's easy to do that for 1 to 2 servings, The one thing that I cook in batches now, especially with my barbecue this summer, is that I'll do my meat, like my chicken or fish or, ribs or whatever I'm doing. I'll cook that all at once on like a Sunday or a Saturday. And then I've got food for 3 or 4 days. And then I only have to worry about like fixing the sides the day of, steaming the broccoli and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I always struggle with that because like when living alone, like you have to either just have everything and eat it all at once, or lay it out so that you have enough to last you for so many days. But I always kind of get to a point where I just find that I end up throwing stuff out, and I feel like I've wasted stuff.
I've run into that a number of times in the last 6 months, and it makes me wonder whether my fridge is running. I mean, it's running like things are cold, but I'm wondering if it's cold all the time. I'm wondering if it's cold enough. It's an apartment fridge, and so you just you get what they give you. And I don't remember if it's been replaced. I think it must have been replaced at least once since I've been here. I know the stove has. But yeah, like that kind of thing. I've noticed that some things go spoiled faster. I freeze a lot of stuff. That's like, I buy the meat, like I'll buy 6 or 8 chicken breasts, and I'll leave 2 in the fridge for dinner, but then I'll freeze the rest. The tricky part is usually just I get busy and I forget to take things out. That's normally where my dinner plans have to change dramatically, because I'm taking the chicken out at dinner time for tomorrow's dinner, but I didn't think about what today's dinner was going to be. So like, it's a tuna wrap, or breakfast for dinner, scrambled eggs, like that kind of stuff happens a fair bit.
Yeah. You have cravings for something like I'm really in the mood for this instead. And then that other food that you had prepared just kind of sits by the wayside.
Yeah, I got pizza on the weekend as a just a treat because I was busy, and I just really had a hankering for pizza, and I've been craving it all week long, and it was really good. Alexander's Pizza up the road for me. I was actually it was a little bit longer of a walk than I would normally do for pickup, but to save myself the hassle of on a Saturday night waiting for whatever driver to deliver my pizza last on their route where it's cold or it just takes like an hour. Because it's a 10-minute walk, like I can literally call them up, order it for pickup, and leave. And by the time I'm like, changing, getting shoes on and getting up there, it's about 15 minutes and it's either all ready or darn near ready. And then I can just walk home with it. Now, it gets a little bit cold coming home 10 minutes outside, rather than being in the car, but it could go into a car for delivery and then not see me for a half an hour or more as the delivery driver is driving around delivering multiple pizzas. Right. So I just, I decided to go that route. And it was good pizza. Talk about treats. It's a large pizza, 8 pieces. I ate 5, which is more than half the pizza in one sitting. Now, it was over the course of the evening. I don't remember what I was watching. It must have been something inconsequential because I'm not talking about it tonight, or today on the show. Speaking of, though, we might as well jump into what we have been looking at.
Yes.
And we'll start with a short but sweet trailer for Lightyear, which is the next Pixar film coming out summer 2022. And as it suggests, it is based on not the toy Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story, but the character Buzz Lightyear that the toy is based on. And so,
which is a really interesting premise.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea. Buzz is voiced by Chris Evans. And so good actor, good voice, really, good hero voice, like good lead. And it looks really cool. Like it looks, has some Wall-E vibes going on, has some Star Wars vibes going on. The stuff that they can do now with like sci-fi looking stuff in Disney Pixar films, Wreck-It Ralph, and Ralph Breaks the Internet comes to mind as like the technology that they can display and how good they can make things look. Because like the blast off and the dust and all this kind of stuff from this trailer, it just looks like a lot of fun.
It does. And they also play it out as though it's a very serious sci-fi in a way, which I think is hilarious. But then there's still a moment when he just kind of falls to the floor and it's like, no, there's going to be the quippy, fun Pixar stuff that we know Pixar is fantastic at.
Mm-hmm. And sidekick characters, cute characters.
Yeah. And also, I feel like it's going to be quite an emotionally lifting film, even when they just show him seeing the traditional spacesuit that he's known for, the Star Command spacesuit.
Right. Yeah, the green and white suit that he has. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't start out in that. It's obviously something that he ends up moving towards and wearing. But there's so much lore that they've built with the whole Star Command universe that the toy is supposed to be based on. It's really just neat that they're diving full in on what does this lore actually look like, almost kind of like what the movie would be watching it, and then kind of going, I want that toy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it looks really good. I'm on board, pardon the pun.
You and me both.
Yeah. And I don't have a lot to say about this next thing because I've only watched part of the first episode, but so far so good. I started watching The Letter for the King on Netflix. It was recommended to me. I recognized the name, and I just kind of gave up on the long search for something to watch on Netflix as my food was getting cold and said, sure, whatever, we'll watch this. And a couple of things hit you right away. It is very well shot and it feels like it has a pretty decent budget. Definitely has Lord of the Rings vibes. I believe it's shot in Australia. I didn't look this up before the show, but it stars, or at least in the first episode, David Wenham, who was Faramir in Lord of the Rings, features heavily. And so it makes me think that it might be Australian shot. But it is really cool in that it has like it's medieval vibes. It's a made up fantasy world of two northern kingdoms that have been at war with a southern kingdom forever. And there's a prophecy that's being fulfilled. The brother of one of the northern princes is basically down south wreaking havoc, and it's revealed that he's got some sort of mystic powers, and he's fulfilling some prophecy. And meanwhile, back home, there's a lot of like peace and politics happening, and you get the idea that this guy's hunger for power is going to turn his conquering of the southern kingdom and the end of the war into something entirely different. That he might be kind of like a dictator or something like that. And he sends letters out to start some sort of political shift, and that hence gives you the name The Letter for the King, because it's meant to go to like the 7 kings, I guess, in the world. I'm really not familiar, like I'm barely scraping the surface on the series, but
yeah, I've not even heard of it, but I'm just having a look at some of the screen captures for it, and like the production value looks really good.
It's beautiful. Like there are some shots, like I'm pretty sure one of the shots was like straight out of Rohan. Like it looks like Rohan should have been there on the hilltop, you know? Really, really cool stuff. It's and well acted. Like it's a youth story. I did a little bit of digging. So The Letter for the King is a book by Dutch author. I want to say Tonka Drott is the name of the author. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. It's from 1962. And has had a number of accolades, including one of the best youth books of the latter half of that century. So, you know, it's got some legs. The thing that caught me and why I thought this might be a good series is because the Netflix tag for it was like based on a novel that has been translated into 25 different languages. And you're like, okay, if a novel's been translated that much, then obviously it's got some legs to it, right? I didn't realize it was
people around the world who want to read it.
Exactly.
Yep.
I didn't realize it was a youth novel though. Like it's along the lines of like Harry Potter, and like it's aimed at that age range. So the main character in the story right away that you realize is this young boy, not Tristan, what's his name? Turi, Tiuri, played by Amir Wilson, also decent actor. He's been in it for a half an hour, so like, you know, it is what it is. And he's playing he's a falconer, and he's trying to earn a place to be a knight. And in order to do that, you have to fight other people your age, around 14, and prove yourself worthy of becoming a knight in these games that are happening in the first episode. And he's up against a bunch of other kids his age from all walks of life and culture, which is really cool. There is a very strong female character. She's also of Asian descent. There is some bigger characters, smaller characters, like quick characters, like the big brutes. Like it has all the kind of like medieval kind of group cast stereotypes. And he is smaller and weaker, but I get the impression that he will then discover his use and or power and or special place in the world, hence like the, you know, coming of age story that most of these novels kind of go for. So anyway, it's good so far. I'm hoping Netflix keeps it going. I mean, season 1 was completed in 2020. There hasn't been any news that I could see of season 2, but we also have the pandemic going on. So whether or not that just delayed the kind of production that they were hoping to continue, I would imagine that they probably had plans for season 2, and then they're like, on this scale, we might have to wait a little while for that to happen. But yeah, anyway, I liked it so far, and it I'm definitely intrigued, and I'm digging the world. Now, these youth series, however, sometimes don't hold up very long, so I'll see if I'm still watching 3 or 4 episodes from now, because the moment that this prince in the south with the powers took his helmet off, Prince Viridian, the names are also kind of contrived because it's an older book. When he took his helmet off, it's just like, okay, it was like CW casting. Like this guy is like a warlord, you know, and he takes off this, and you're just like, wow, that is one heck of a jaw, you know, and a hair and this like surfer hairdo. And you're just like, not so medieval, but okay, you know, I'll bite. Whereas the other characters so far were like, they're attractive, but they're not like too attractive for their roles, you know, except for like, you know, the princesses and then the kings. He's like, okay, well, that sort of makes sense, but not the warrior. The warrior should have a little bit more grizzle to them, I think. Anyway, so far so good. But that's what I've been watching. The other thing that I've been spending a lot of time on is Satisfactory Update 5. So I spoke about this on the show a little while ago. Update 5 came out on Tuesday this past week, so I've been streaming daily over on twitch.tv/JoelDuggan and exploring the new update. This is in the experimental branch of the game, so they're still patching it. They're hoping to get it more stable and bring it to the early access version later on in November. So I have two saves going on in the game. I have the Devastator Factory and the Metroplex Factory, both of them which are based off of Transformers. And all that is just like it's a color palette and some art direction, and just kind of it's a fun theme for me to kind of put into the factory, so I don't have to make too many decisions. But what they did was they updated a number of things, like the foliage and dressing overhaul of the Northern Forest on the map. There's a load of new building parts, including signs, and a huge variety of shapes and customizations, beams, pillars. There's a new building system, which allows you to build up to 10 parts in a row for some pieces. It makes constructing large factories a lot faster. I would also argue, though, that the level of detail you can do now is going to just take as much time, because now that you can, you probably will take the time to detail things out. And one of the biggest things that's changed, they've introduced a system called soft clipping. So previously, everything in the game had a hitbox, and two things with a hitbox couldn't really overlap. Now, a lot more things have what they call soft clearance. So conveyor belts, walls, beams, walkways, stuff like that all has soft clearance. So if you want to have it go through a wall, go for it. It's up to you. If it looks awful, that's on you, not on the game. Some things have hard clearance. Those are things like buildings that make things, like a coal plant or a constructor. You can't put another constructor inside of a constructor, but you can run a belt right through it or a pipe right through it. So it's kind of just allowing players to be a little bit more creative, kind of figure out what's going on. I've got some links in the show notes to some of the new building shapes that people have come up with in just a couple of days, and it's mind-blowing what people can do now.
Is this fixing some frustrations that you may have had? Because I know that when you're building things, whether it's Satisfactory or Minecraft, there's obviously very much a perfectionist edge that you have as a creative. Do you find that this is allowing you to do a lot more stuff that previously frustrated you, or were there kind of roadblocks where you're kind of like, I wish it could do this, and now it does?
Yeah, everything in Satisfactory runs in roughly 8 meter by 8 meter blocks, or 8 meter by 4 meter walls, that kind of thing. And they've introduced a lot of angled pieces. You had ramps, so you could run platforms at angles, but you couldn't have any walls at an angle. So you try to put a roof on something that would ultimately have a gable, and you'd have to leave the space empty or fill it with a ginormous foundation that looks really awkward. So everything had these like really thick walls and really strange looks to it. So now that they've added triangle pieces, and the triangle pieces are like, there's like 4 or 5 of each different texture. So like it's 1 meter, 2 meter, 4 meter, 8 meter, like there's all kinds of different stuff. And so that is really cool. The customization of the colors has changed a lot. You used to have to carry around a paint gun, and you could paint something by shooting it. And now it's part of your build system. So you can just change the color at will. They kind of like, it's the kind of game that has like inflatable pocket dimensions in the game lore. So like they kind of tongue in cheek, like you can just change the color of whatever you want at whim, because technology, like it's just, they kind of wink, nudge that, at the beginning.
Yeah. Don't think about it too much. Just
exactly. Yeah. So that's really cool, because you can create custom base colors, so you don't have to paint everything. You can save colors. They have hex codes now. So from a creative standpoint, there's a lot of really cool things in the game.
I remember you having some frustrations about the colors, and I think you were actually saying you wish you could just have a hex color, so you could just select a specific one rather than having to drag that color wheel that they had.
So that's exactly what the issue was, is that the color bars did not work in the same way like a Photoshop color bar would work.
That was it. Yeah.
And it wouldn't quite save it. But now you can save presets. So like you can figure like, oh, that's Metroplex red. I'm just going to save that, and I can always grab that from a list. Nice. And also now they have hex codes. So like if you're looking at something online, or like some people that aren't artists can go online and say like, what's a really good color palette? And they could just like, grab like, an IKEA living room that they like, or they can go to Pinterest and find like a really cool swatch of colors from a painting. And it'll say, oh, here's your highlights, yellow and orange. Here's your deep blues for your contrast colors. And then everything you build just has these bright blue and bright orange contrasting colors. And it makes things really easy to see. The signs are really helpful because previously you could put down things like a beacon in the game, and that's a marker. It's meant to be like a GPS point for you to say, go back here and find this thing later. But I've been using them as signs. Like I'll put them in my base and say, this is 600, iron per minute coming in and going to iron plates, because I need to remember that for later. Now you can put signs. I mean, I'm talking signs that are either like a foot square or 20-foot square. Like you can put billboards on the side of your factories and go, iron made here, or, or put up a picture or do whatever you want. And so it's really cool. So for things like storing stuff in bins and remembering what's in the bin, what you used to have to do was have a conveyor belt come out the front like a tongue, and the items in the bin would be on the conveyor belt. And that's how you remembered that's got concrete in it. This other one has got plates in it. This other one has got rods in it. Now you can just put signs across the front of them with pictures on it. You don't even have to use words. They've basically given you the UI that they use to make the game. So when you go into the build menu and it shows you iron ingots and copper pipes and all that kind of stuff, they've given you, the player, the ability to put those icons on your builds. So it becomes like super simple. It's like color coding shulker boxes in Minecraft, red box, redstone, very easy to spot. Well, now it's just like the big sign that has a picture of concrete on it is on the bin that has concrete in it. There's no words, you don't have to worry about it. It's basically color coding. So
it sounds like they just give you free stickers.
Yeah.
Slap on everything.
Yeah. Which also that would have been very on par, because like even things that you carry around in the game, like your weapon has like a little keychain dongle on it. Like it's a little wrench that kind of jingles around. So like there's all those kind of little touches. But that's all the cosmetic stuff. The other things that they've added are, like I said, the new build system, being able to put things at 45-degree angles, which, yes, surprisingly you couldn't do before. Also snapping to conveyor inputs and outputs, as well as a new vehicle system. So the vehicles have a new system for recording paths. You don't have to record a new path for every vehicle. You can record one path, and if you want multiple vehicles on that path, you can just assign a vehicle. Do this route. This is the coal route. Please do the coal route, and then also add 2 more cars to the coal route because I need more coal. Like you can do stuff like that now, which is just, it makes sense, right? You're playing in this sci-fi game, and some stuff was just really rudimentary and labor intensive. The other thing is that they've now included collision in trains, which we've always known was coming. So when I was building trains in my world, I was always having 2 tracks, inbound and outbound, so that you'd never have like a head-on collision. If they did head-on collide in Update 4, they would pass through each other. They would just phase through one another. Nothing would happen. Now, trains will actually collide and smash and fall over the place. I've not had a chance to play with it yet because my Update 5 world doesn't have trains yet. I've unlocked it, but I haven't had a chance to build any. So that's happening later this week. But they now have train signals. So much like in real life, you can have 2 train tracks, and if they cross or if there's an intersection, then when one train is going through the intersection, another train is told to stop, wait for that train to pass through, and then continue on. And it just, it's a big boy version of Lego trains. Like it's really fun to watch.
Will you be using this new feature for good or for evil?
So not much happens when the trains collide. It's not like a big mess happens. They kind of fall over the track, and then you got to go put them back on the rail. But they made it super, super simple. It's not, the game doesn't really do a lot to punish the player. Like if you die, all of your stuff is just put into a box and you go back and get it. Unless you fall off the edge of the world. That's the only time you'll lose everything in your inventory. Unlike in Minecraft, where like if you don't get back there in time, or if you fall in lava, your stuff is gone. There's a bit of a, I really have to not die in Minecraft. Whereas with Satisfactory, it's just more of a pain in the butt than it is anything else.
Falling off the side of the world just kind of sounds like a you problem anyway. Just kind of like, if you were stupid enough to just fall off the side of the world, then maybe you don't deserve your stuff.
Well, there is some clipping and issues and stuff like that. It is an early access game, but it's a very well done early access game.
And you said that like this is like an update that's not really in the main thing. So is this like a separate update just for now, kind of like a Minecraft snapshot.
Correct. Yeah. So what they do is they have an experimental branch and an early access branch. And
Right.
the reason that they use the experimental is because the game has become so popular in early access that people have big factories and things that will be messed up, potentially like corrupting save files and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
they put out the updates when they feel it's ready in the experimental branch to give players a ton of time to play around with it, point out bugs, stress test it. They've added servers, dedicated servers for multiplayer in this update, so people can test those out. So they have all that kind of information that they then apply to and then make changes. And sometimes it could be just like, not necessarily like, this is a bug, please fix it. More like, hey, you know those doors that you added? They're a little bit small, or they don't open soon enough. Like, for example, it's got doors like Star Trek where like you walk up to it and they kind of they kind of open up.
Nice.
Yeah, but you have to be so close to it that you barely see it, right? The sensor needs to open sooner so that you can see it open before you walk through it, rather than being like so close to the door that you can't actually see the animation. So there's stuff like that that I think they might tweak over time. So that's why they have it on the experimental branch. And I played on the Epic Game Store. You can download it on Steam as well. It's on sale for 20% off right now until November 1st for people, wanting to try to get into it. It's one of those things that I think it's only 35 Canadian to start with, so it's around $30 right now. And it's one of those creative games. Like, you kind of have to enjoy the problem solving, creative building games like Sim Cities and City Skylines, Minecraft to an extent. That kind of stuff. I'd say that's kind of where it is. The train thing has really got me intrigued. I'd love to build out the train network on my main save, which I've got something crazy like 500 hours in over the course of several years. Because the trains just look so cool. The new build parts really kind of give you a lot of freedom. I'll have links in the show notes to a couple of images made by Reddit users of the kind of things that you can do now. Satisfactory and Coffee Stain Studios did put out a patch notes video. And I would say one of the only criticisms I have of the update is how much I dislike the video. It's 20 minutes long with 10 minutes of content. The other 10 minutes is a bunch of golf shenanigans and jokes that the devs thought was funny and worthwhile, littered with lots of adult language that is unnecessary. It just feels really unprofessional, despite the fact how good the devs are at the game and communicating with the community. They have streams every Tuesdays where they do Q&As and showcase stuff. So I don't want to say that the dev team is not good, but the choice that they made for this trailer is not what they've done before, and it really didn't fly with me. So I'll point people towards I Am Kibitz, who is one of my favorite Satisfactory streamers. He has a YouTube channel, and he did like a 20-30 minute video of just him in game showing off all the new stuff. And he's nerding out over it because he's really excited. So it kind of gives you a really good idea of someone that knows the game very, very well, seeing the new parts and not just announcing the new part, but also explaining why it's good. Like what is it going to do for him, and how it's going to affect things going forward. People haven't had a lot of time to mess with trains because it's really complicated. So look for that in the next few weeks. But this is where I am. Like I've been having, like I said, that Netflix struggle where I just can't find something to watch. So ultimately, after my dinner is over, after whatever 20-minute YouTube video that I'm watching, I'm back in the studio messing around with Satisfactory in between streams, trying to learn about the parts, trying to figure out what I can communicate to my stream viewers on Twitch about what I've learned and some new ideas. And it really is opening up a lot. Like, some of the things in the game are square and you can paint them. And that means you could do pixel art if you wanted to in Satisfactory, with the pixels being like 1 meter by 1 meter or 2 meter by 2 meter blocks. Like it's really interesting what they're doing. So that's it for me on kind of like what I've been up to from a nerdy side of things. What have you been interested in this last little while?
Most recently, Star Trek Prodigy, which launched today. So I watched that first thing this morning, and because it's launched today, I'm not really going to go into spoilers because I don't think that would be fair on anyone. But I thought it was a fantastic pilot. It's definitely a show that's for all ages, unlike Lower Decks, which is definitely a lot more mature themed. And certainly a lot more accessible for a new generation of Star Trek fans. So if you like Star Trek, if you have kids and you want to get them in, I think this is probably the perfect show for it, which is why it was made. It was a collaboration with Nickelodeon. Almost said Netflix then. Nickelodeon behind it. It's a very colorful show, as you would probably expect from something like that. And it's definitely in line with the kind of animation and aesthetic that's popular with a lot of young people right now, especially even when you take shows like like Star Wars, The Clone Wars, or Star Wars Rebels. It's that kind of vibe to it, which I think does make it a little bit more accessible, and that's going to add some familiarity to a lot of kids. Whereas for people like myself who are, been watching Star Trek for years, the familiarity comes from things like having the ship and having the music, which it does have that very Star Trek undertone to the score, which I really liked. And we've also got, and we know this from all the promotional material, that there's a reappearance of Captain Janeway, which will also give quite a bit of familiarity to it.
So I'm looking at the characters, and they've got some really cool, unique designs. Like, with the exception of the blue guy with the white mohawk, everybody else looks pretty unique.
Yeah, it's a wonderful mix of characters. I love how they introduce them. They do introduce them one at a time, and they're characters that I'm actually really invested in already just from the pilot. I think that especially when you've got them mostly as very young ages.
Mm-hmm.
It was always going to be kind of like, am I going to be into this? But no, I think they're just absolutely wonderful. There's definitely as well with the main villain in this pilot, a bit of a Charles Dickens Fagin vibe from him.
Okay.
Especially with a group that are called the Unwanted, and I won't really go any more into that. But there's definitely that kind of thing going on, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that continues. And we do also get, on top of all these new design characters, the blob looking character as well, by the way, is hilarious. That's by far my favorite, and I really want to see more of him. But there are some other familiar species. So we get a return of the Kazon. There is a Kazon in this. So we know it's set in the Delta Quadrant. If there's a Kazon there, then it at least gives us some idea as to whereabouts, because it must be at least on the edge of Kazon space. And there's also a Medusan. And that is a species that we saw in the original series. It was a creature that was kind of held in a box, because if anybody looked at it, it was supposed to be so hideously ugly that it would drive people mad. They would go insane. So this woman who's blind comes aboard to escort this ambassador, and everybody, like Spock, has to wear this kind of red visor to at least reduce the effects for him. But for humans, they just would not be able to see it. So it's interesting having a Medusan as part of the roster there as well. It's just going to be neat to see what they do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as it's not an easy species to really focus with when it's one that you can't really see without going mad. So
yeah, it'd be interesting. I won't mention the voice actors because I don't want to spoil anything for people. I'm just looking at it quickly and say, like, if they've got some villains, then they've got some well-known villain voice actors that I think will really sell the bad guys in the series. And I love the way it looks. Like, I'm just looking at images on Google, but like the rendering and the actual, I mean, I'll reserve full judgment until I see it animated, but the character designs and the rendering, like, it looks, like you said, bright and colorful, but also like futuristic and spacey and in animation,
grittiness to it.
Yes, there is a little bit of grittiness to it.
Yeah, a bit like in Lightyear. There's actually a very similar kind of grittiness in that.
And something that you have the freedom to do in animation that they don't in the Star Trek TV show is that aliens are not just a human with a different prosthetic on their face. Like it's not just an actor in a suit. Like what, like you said, there's a blob character that looks to be about 3 and 4 feet tall. There's a huge rock crystal looking character that's like much taller than everybody else and 3 times as wide. There's a robot that has like a very high waist. Like it's some really cool stuff that kind of allows them to do character design and the strengths of animation, whereas you're a little bit hamstrung for that kind of stuff in a TV series, usually because of budgets. I think back to a good film example would be the droid in Rogue One, right? Where it's voiced and then animated into the scenes because they couldn't put a person in it for it to have those kind of proportions. Like that I think is the strength here.
Definitely, especially for a series. Like you say, for a film, that's one thing. To have a long ongoing series would just be impossible, really, to sustain that on a kind of TV budget.
Anything else going on in the small screen or the big screens?
I've been mostly kind of revisiting some old stuff. So Westworld is one of the shows that I've kind of gone back to and rewatching. And that happened because I ended up selling my retro game collection because they're all games from the UK. Can't play them anymore. And they've just been collecting dust. So I traded those in a place that would actually accept UK games and managed to get myself a PlayStation 3 with a whole roster of games as well. Some of the ones that are old favorites that I've played before, but ones that I never got a chance to play. And so one of those was Red Dead Redemption. And when I was playing that, I was getting a lot of real Westworld vibes, especially when it came to disposing of different people, getting rid of a lot of the NPCs. And that made me kind of want to go back and just rewatch Westworld, which still, no surprise, holds up incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since learned that Red Dead Redemption was cited as being one of the inspirations behind the direction of the show. Because obviously it was a spin-off of the movie, but the way that they took the show was slightly different, and Red Dead Redemption was actually part of the inspiration behind that. And I'm definitely desperate for season 4, which thankfully returns next year.
Oh, they are making a season 4. Nice.
They are, yeah. I think again, pandemic has delayed things a bit, but that is supposed to return 2022.
I tried to watch season 3. And it was okay, but I just really didn't care about, like, there was a real switch in all new characters, and I was already invested in the other characters. So I know it's a new story arc, so like I kind of have to give it a little bit more time, I think. But yeah. I think the problem is that like they're in like the futuristic city, and just like you've kind of seen that 1,000 times over in all the sci-fi films and shows that we've watched. Whereas the Western thing had a really cool niche to it, right? You're like, oh yeah, okay, I really want to watch this show because it's so different for the first 2 seasons.
I kind of hope that they do return for that very reason. If it completely leaves the park, then it kind of takes away from the bit that I love, which is why I've really enjoyed going back and watching the first couple of seasons. I'm just coming towards the end of season 2 again, so I'm about to head back into season 3.
How far are you in Red Dead Redemption? I've seen some of it played. I've never played it myself, but a couple of friends have been raving about it, and another has been talking about Red Dead Redemption 2, which I have access to via Xbox Game Pass.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've heard that the sequel is supposed to be excellent. I'm not that far in the first one. I've been doing various things. I've also found that it doesn't allow you to do a lot of stuff to the NPCs. Like you can't just drop them off a ledge or drop them in a river or place them on train tracks unless you start to do things like put them down nearby and then gently nudge them. And so I've been able to nudge them into the water and drown them after tying them up. You could because you can tie people up and put them on the back of your horse and carry them and stuff. There was one guy who a sheriff wanted me to capture an escaped prisoner, and I could either kill the prisoner or bring it back to the sheriff. So I tied him up, brought him back to the sheriff, and the sheriff just shoots him in the head anyway. So,
no, yeah.
But when you put them on the train tracks, it's obvious that the designers don't want you to be doing stuff like this, like murdering people in very bad ways.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do nudge them just in front of the train obliterates them. It is shocking.
I can imagine.
Like, I was half expecting there to be entrails that I'd have to pull off my hat. It was it was just the body just exploded.
Oh my God. It sounds
Yeah.
more graphic than I remember.
Yeah. I was very shocked too. I was not what I was expecting when I saw that. I'm enjoying it though. I'm taking my time with it, and it's nice just to be able to have a go at games like this, which I never had because I never had a PlayStation 3. So yeah, and especially like with the Westworld vibes, that's always been really good. The other thing that I've been looking back on though is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but the original comics by Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman. There's new to me. It came out I think around 2018. I want to say they've done 3 volumes so far. I think there's a 4th volume coming, and it's basically the Color Classics collection. And they're basically releasing all of the original issues in order and in color because the original comics were all black and white. And the new coloring is excellent. It's vibrant. I have seen some attempts at people just doing like their own coloring over the top, but this is properly done, and it's just giving like a whole new lease on life to them. It's just making it a real joy to reread them. But I did find that there is a little inconsistency where the April has her Volkswagen van, and that ends up becoming the turtle van. So obviously it's green, and so in this it's colored green. But in the first time it ever appeared, the police are chasing it, and they describe it as being blue, but they've still got it colored green. So that was kind of a weird, like, it's obviously not blue though. I don't know why you're chasing down this this blatantly green van, but it kind of makes sense that they don't want to change the dialogue, but yeah, they're obviously. I think the color probably came as a later decision later on, and they have to kind of keep the consistency there. So I mean, it's a comic; I can forgive it.
Yeah. And plus, it's something that's being revisited. Like it's not like it's a brand new comic or something that's coming out now. And
oh yeah. But it's great. I've sent you a sort of side by side comparison of 3 of the pages, and just the way that they've done the coloring is just fantastic.
Yeah, they've left a lot of the original high contrast black and white in there. Like they're just adding the color. They're not necessarily going over the inks. They're kind of going underneath them and kind of like giving a little bit more
that's it.
life to it. I've never been a fan of the original comics. I've never liked the turtle designs from the comics. I always thought it looked more like a doodle than anything else.
It was very, very different, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Later incarnations have been good. It's the story that I really enjoy. I love a lot of the additional lore and stuff. The movies and the 80s TV show, which I adore. I've always grown up being a massive fan of them. But they were simplified versions of the origin story. And so I do like the extra meat that you get in the original comic. And I would say that the 2003 series and the series that came after that, I can't remember what year that one came out. Those two are probably the 2 most true to the comics as well in terms of following the storyline.
Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is brought to you by you, dear listener. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite into the member-only Discord server that includes a role lined up with your support level, and you can chat with everybody else about nerdy things, including a spoiler chat. And I know that people have been talking about Dune in there, so I haven't been avoiding it. But if you're dying to talk about Dune, this is a place to do it safely. Patron count is at 24. I just checked that the other day. That's steady on from the last episode. And our goal each month is to have at least one more person than the month before. That's only a quarter a person a week. So depending on how hard they get hit by a train in Red Dead Redemption, we can maybe put them back together and turn them into a patron. If you would like to become patron number 25, then visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Look both ways before you cross the tracks, people, especially if Alastair's playing, I'm telling you.
It'll take a long time to piece somebody back together from that. For sure.
On the PG side of things, my pick this week is an Instagram account called Brick Bending. I found this through the official Lego Instagram. Geometric art in Lego bricks by artist Jeff Sanders. This is Very cool stuff. Ranges in size from stuff that you can put on your coffee table to things that hang in galleries, including 10-point geometry in brick, a title of a piece that has 75,000 pieces and looks like the scale of a Jackson Pollock painting from like the MoMA in New York. So combination of like sculpture, painting, installation piece, because these things have to be assembled. Very, very cool stuff. I would encourage people to check it out. Really can't do a lot to describe it on a podcast, but just know that if you're thinking about like what can really be achieved with Lego bricks, that every Lego brick, when you connect it, has a little bit of give. So if you connect enough of them together with that little bit of a twist, you can actually make things like circles or more complex geometric shapes than you think. Think kaleidoscope, don't think squares. And go check out this site. It's really, really cool.
I'm looking at it and I'm looking, and my initial thought is how?
Mm-hmm.
Like fine, the circles in there, but things aren't even just in a straight line. Like there is curves to even the whole thing. You can't really describe it in a podcast. You have to see it, but that is mind bending.
Yeah. So some things that I've seen are like, what looks like a DNA strand, a lot of kinetic looking things, snowflake looking designs, a lot of concentric circles. Like I said, think kaleidoscope meets Lego, and you'd have a pretty good idea.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be looking for more. Apparently there's a YouTube channel as well. I'm going to dig into that and see if I can't see a little bit more explanation behind the scenes, but just really, really talented. And I don't know where or how you get this many Lego bricks of the same kind, right? Like it's because the pieces are usually uniform in color. Like it's all black, and it's all black pieces that are like one brick by two studs or whatever. And you're just like, and then it's like 75,000 of them. Like you'd have to be sponsored at some point. Like I'm not sure how you would get all this stuff, but anyway, some very, very cool stuff. I highly encourage people to check it out. Where can people find your pick this week, Alastair?
Mine's from Hasbro Pulse. There's a new Ghostbusters Plasma Series Proton Pack, which is based on Spengler's Proton Pack from Ghostbusters. It is an astonishing prop that's probably the only one that you can get at that kind of quality that's lower than that's below $400.
Wow.
So the detail on it is incredible. Like there's even the back panel opens up and you can see inside like the containment unit. It's nuts. And what they've done is they've scanned the original Proton Pack prop that's been used in the new Ghostbusters Afterlife film. So super accurate. And I've had a Doctor Who prop that's the sonic screwdriver that's been scanned from the original prop, and so when you get that quality, I'm all on board for it. It's a crowdfunded project though, so they're not available yet. The crowdfunding ends in December with a release date planned for early 2023. But even if you don't end up getting in on this, and I wish I was made of money so that I could, because this just looks incredible. I love the commercial that they've made for this. They've done a fantastic, hilarious parody of the in-movie TV spot that the three original Ghostbusters did.
Nice.
Yeah, the kind of like, we're ready to believe you, that whole bit. Yeah, that's how they've decided to advertise this. It's great. So definitely worth watching, even just for that clip.
Nice. Yeah, we'll include the clip in the show notes as well this week. I've seen a lot of this happening because of obviously with the new Ghostbusters film coming out next month. I think. So is it? I'm surprised it wasn't coming out for Halloween, honestly. But maybe just pandemic schedules and whatever. But I'm looking forward to it. It looks really good. I've seen the trailers.
Same.
And I would expect that next year, provided that pandemic restrictions roll back as they are planning to, that convention goers are going to see a lot more Ghostbusters costumes. And some of the prop makers that I'll see on TikTok, you're starting to see some like, Proton Pack plans and kind of like looking at Ghostbuster stuff and thinking about how you would do this kind of thing. And it's in the hands of the right artists. Like people can come up with some very, very cool things.
This one as well doesn't come with the rack that traditionally it's mounted to, but it looks like they've got screw holes. So I think that's just to probably hit that price point. But again, it just means that you'll probably see people getting these and modding them to make them even better. And it's just incredible what some people can do with these kind of props.
I've always thought it was neat now with electronics and how small you can have like LEDs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Like being able to customize this, plus like having anything on your costume that could make sound effects. So in the same way that lightsabers that you buy, the fancy prop lightsabers that make really cool lightsaber sound effects, like having that kind of very iconic hum power up, from a proton pack is just that kind of thing. To walk into a cosplay floor and just kind of like, turn on your power pack. That would be really fun.
They have two modes. So they have the 1984 movie sounds, and they've got the one from the new movie as well. So they actually have them as two different modes for it as well, which I don't know what the new sounds are like. So that's going to be interesting to see how those have changed.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can find links to some of the things that Alastair and I talked about this week at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and you can email the show at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube, and tell a friend. One of the best ways to grow the podcast is to just spread the word. So if you think that people might like some nerdy stuff, then point them our way. And while you're out there, another great way is to actually leave a review on the iTunes store. Even if you don't listen on iTunes, log in, leave a review, make a rating, and then peace out and listen however you want. But it does a lot to put our podcast in the ear holes of potential new listeners that are just looking for stuff randomly online, because a lot of podcaster apps will pull from the iTunes listings. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. You can check out my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. Lots of news going on the next couple of weeks as we are gearing up for the release of 1.18. That is Minecraft The Caves and Cliffs Update Part 2. Today, you can go to twitch.tv/JoelDuggan, where I'm going to be playing a lot of Satisfactory, as well as streaming some Minecraft on the weekends. Alastair, where can people find you online?
Oh, you can find me on both Twitter and Twitch as Alastair McFly, and discover everything else I'm involved with over at alastairmcfly.com. And that, of course, includes Long Range Sensors, my retrospective podcast series all about Star Trek, which you can find over at longrangesensors.com, and of course on all the usual podcasting apps.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.